Okie doke. So, welcome. I'm Nigel from Beerducation, and this is Greg from Rhizome Beverages. So, welcome, Greg.
Nigel, very good. Thanks for having me today. Look forward to this.
My pleasure, mate.
Some Irish craft beers.
Yeah, sensational. So, tell us a little bit about Rhizome Beverages. Tell us a little bit about what they do, the beers they bring in, and and we can start with that.
Gotcha. So, look, I started Rhizome Beverages here just over 4 years ago, based in Melbourne. And my background is in the kind of Irish drinks industry, and I moved to Australia about 8 years ago. And kind of as soon as I got my permanent residency, I set about setting up my own business, and kind of jumped out on my own. So I've been working with some of the best kind of Irish craft brewers and distillers over the last kind of 4 years, and I'm really delighted to be bringing in the likes of Ohara's, Rye River Brewing Co. I also work with the likes of 8 Degrees from time to time, and on the spirit side of things, I do with Dingle, who are a little distillery down in West Cork, who've been getting a lot of awards and attention, and Blackwater Distillery from Waterford as well, so amongst others. So in addition to Rhizome is basically the wholesale part of the business, so supplying bottle shops, bars, restaurants, etc. But for consumers, I have a website called artisanireland.com.au, and that's kind of it's the biggest selection of Irish craft beers and spirits in Australia, and we're constantly bringing in small batch releases and really interesting brews. So I'd say a lot of your guys out there just wouldn't be aware that we even exist at the moment. So hopefully we'll be able to spread the word and let a few people know that there's a really interesting website here that has a lot of beers that just can't be got anywhere else in Australia.
Yeah, nice one, mate. We'll dig into some of the different beers that you bring in over the space of the session, and we've got some. You've put together an option or a package for Beerducation members, which has got a bit of a mix. So we'll get to that later. But for now, we'll talk about, I guess, what's probably your biggest brand in terms of bringing in is Ohara's. Now, people have probably been familiar with this. It's been around for a while. They can see it often. They'll see it in Dan Murphy's and so on. And they used to be in bottles, but they've moved to cans now, and it's the bigger cans, 440 ml cans, and this one's in nitro as well. So, do you still bring in the bottles, or is it just cans now?
Yeah, look, the stubbies, I still bring them in, and I've actually only had the Irish Red Ale and Nitro for about the last 3 months.
Yeah,
we've had the Stout for a little bit longer. And but there's just some customers still prefer the stubbies. They prefer their kind of just the genuine Stout or Red Ale just in a glass bottle. So it's still their preference. But as you know, with craft beer, like a lot of places that I go into these days, they won't entertain stubbies.
Yeah.
It's cans or nothing. Yeah. So I'm pretty delighted now to get Ohara's Red and the Stout available, not just in a can, but in a nitro can. It's a bit of a game changer for me, and already I've just kind of seen that the interest and the uptake amongst consumers is it's a lot stronger than it is for the stubbies. But nice. Stubbies is still there for a certain kind of cohort of beer drinkers. But this is opening doors for us now as well. The nitro format, which is great.
Perfect. All right. So we better not make it too much of a dry argument. We'll pour it now with Stout with nitro cans. Often there's a little bit of a trick depending on what they use for the nitro to ignite it. Has it got a widget or anything like that, or do we tip it upside down and pour it?
No, it's got the widget inside. So normally I just recommend taking it out of the fridge a couple of minutes before you're going to pour it.
Yeah.
Just to let it warm up a little bit, because these beers, they're meant to be cold, but they're not meant to be served kind of freezing cold, because a lot of the subtle flavors that you're looking for, if it's too cold, it's just going to lock them out.
Yep. So, well, I've already done that. I'm ahead of you. So I had it out of the fridge. So just a straight pour, no need to shake the can.
Don't shake it. Just click it open and leave it for about 2 or 3 seconds to let the gas just release through the beer. So.
Okay, and then a pour.
And then we start pouring. Yeah.
A good strong pour.
To start with, and then I try to get, depending on the glass you're using, I try to get all of the can into the one glass. So so it's a one single pour. But what you should see straight away is that
a lot of foam.
It's all foam, yeah, and that is just gradually going to cascade down. So that's the nitro effect really taking place there. So gradually, the darker beer at the bottom will come up to the top of the rim, and the head will just continue to consolidate at the top.
It's pretty to watch, isn't it? And so
it's amazing, yeah.
So while we're talking about some of the classic things around with the style of beer is that thing like, okay, so serving temperature for this style of beer is probably around between 4 and 7 degrees, and so it does need to come out perhaps a little bit early out of the fridge and let it sort of warm up just a fraction. The recommended glass is a pint glass, so you can use different styles of pints, and this one I've got an imperial pint glass, but it's got the whole 440 in there, no problems. It's got a little bit of head on the top as well. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of the style while we're on that. So it's style 15A in the BJCP guidelines. The IBUs for these are a range of 18 to 28, so on the sort of mild side of hop bitterness. The SRM range, which is the colour range, is 9 to 14, so you can see it's really starting to come out and be colour's a bit hard to get in this, but it's sort of like a amber to sort of ruby red style, I guess. Looks darker in the picture than this, but I can't tip it over and get the light right behind it. And yeah, the ABV range is from 3.8 to 5%, and this one comes in at 4.3, so bang in the range there. So, in fact, when if you look in the BJCP guidelines, it actually has Oharas there as one of the recognised commercial styles too. So, I'm just gonna have a bit of a sniff and a bit of a taste. Mine's come up now. It's still got a nice, good creamy head, a really tight creamy head, which is nice to look at. That head's beautiful and creamy.
Yeah, look, even on the nose, I find it just this is all about showcasing the malt. That's the key with kind of Irish reds, and I think even on this now you're getting a lovely bit of caramel kind of coming off the nose there as well, which kind of is a little bit of an appetizer. And then as you say, once you dip into it, just the nitro head, it's really, really solid. And just like you would get in a pub, in Ireland, as it were. And so I'll just have a little taster.
And while you're doing that, I like doing a bit of history. And so I had a bit of a read up on it today. So a little bit of the background. So the Irish red ale originated in the city of Kilkenny. They can date it back to the early 1700s. And it had been brewed in a brewery which was called St. Francis Abbey, which is also apparently called Kilkenny Grey Friary. And it's a medieval Franciscan abbey and national monument in Kilkenny City. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, beers back in the day were brewed by monks in monasteries, so that was kind of the order of the day. And that is, it's actually in more recent times you've got Smithwick's, which is the kind of the best known kind of Irish red beer, Irish red ale, and that's where it's been brewed predominantly in the city of Kilkenny. Yeah. So it's that's the birthplace of the Irish red style. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously it's got a long history there as well, going back to 1700. So again, it's just great to kind of showcase the fact that Ireland has had this really lengthy kind of love affair with with beer, and has been responsible for producing a number of different styles as well.
Yeah. Well, it's talking about Smithwick's. It said that they were the ones who basically took it overseas. So they were around in the 1960s, and they were the company was acquired by Guinness in 1965, and then they relaunched that particular style of beer, and then in 1987 they started exporting it. And that's when it got into into the States. And it said, I mean, it used to be, obviously, it's one of these things where the name changes over time. It wasn't called an Irish red ale, it was just called an Irish ale. But then when it got over to the States, and they were looking at the style, and they hadn't really, well, it's already called an Irish ale, not an Irish red ale, yeah. And then when they got it over there, and they were sort of like, oh, what's this new style? And everybody thought it was just like another amber sort of beer, but they realised, oh no, this is quite different in the style. The interesting thing, which I picked up in this, was the one which is from Killian's, which was an Irish red. It was actually a lager, even though it was called an ale. So yeah, they ended up. The Americans sort of got hold of it, and they started calling it Irish red ale to sort of differentiate it from all the other amber ales and red beers that were floating around at the time. So then when it went back to Ireland and whatever, that's when they started calling it an Irish red ale over there, because before it was just called an Irish ale. So it sort of got exported, and then the name got changed and then imported back into Ireland. So a little bit of interesting history there. But yeah, I mean, the main thing, I guess, is there is a long history with this style of beer. But it is now, considered unique to Ireland. And a couple of the things that make an Irish red ale quite different than any other, ales or similar style ales is the dryness. And that comes from the malting that they use as well.
Well, look, even what's interesting about O'Hara's, red ales aren't kind of that well renowned for having hoppiness. They're normally a little bit sweeter, a little bit more mellow. Yep. But Ohara, they've added like a late addition of Mount Hood hops to the brew, and you just get that, like, you've got that lovely sweetness and the caramel and biscuit kind of initially, but then about 30 seconds later, that sweetness is kind of tapered off with a really sublime dry finish, and that's just coming through from the hops. That'll be one of the things that really sets O'Hara's apart in the Irish red kind of stakes, is that they have that little bit of hop kind of reprise coming through at the end. So, but incredibly well balanced. And I think even with the likes of O'Hara's, like they were started up in 1996. And, just very quickly about Irish brewing, and, all of the main brands that were popular in Ireland gradually got bought over by the larger global conglomerates. And they were also promoting their other brands that they were brewing under license. So all of a sudden in Ireland, you had the likes of, Budweiser came in, and that kind of really hit Harp Lager, which would have been the main Irish, like a VB type kind of brand, like just everywhere you went, that's what you had. So people started getting introduced to some of these new American and European style beers, and a lot to the detriment of a lot of the Irish beers and a lot of Irish styles. So with O'Hara's, they started up in 1996. They were like the first kind of proper craft brewery outside of a craft brew pub, who wanted to go in and kind of rekindle the Irish craft brewing tradition. And they had found that a lot of the traditional beers, like the Irish Reds and your Stouts and stuff, because they had gone with the big guys and they were looking at export markets and really introducing these beers to people maybe for the first time, they kind of pulled back a little bit on the recipes and on the kind of beer profile, just to make them that little bit more accessible for mainstream.
Yeah.
And I think over the years that trend has continued, and that's what O'Hara's found themselves now as being like a true definition of what an Irish stout, an Irish dry stout, or an Irish red ale is supposed to be. So they've gone back and revisited all of the old kind of historical kind of brewing notes from previous breweries, and it's become a bit of a thing in Ireland at the moment, just doing that process, not just in beer but also in whiskey, which at the turn of the 20th century, Irish whiskey was the single biggest selling spirit in the world, and Scotch whiskey wasn't even really a thing at that time. But over the next 20 to 30 years, the War of Independence, First World War, and Prohibition, these big events combined, the whiskey distillation industry in Ireland was just absolutely knocked over. And so by the time we got to the 1970s, there was only 3 actual distilleries left in Ireland who were distilling whiskey. So there's been in the last kind of, since the late 80s, early 90s, there's been a real kind of focus now on trying to reclaim some of that rich heritage of brewing and distilling that Ireland is renowned for. It's one of those things, when people think of Ireland, they may think of the colour green, they might think of grass, they might think of music, maybe poetry, but certainly alcohol, beer, whiskey isn't too far away either. And Irish pubs, which are kind of successful across the globe. We just seem to do something kind of different with the Irish pub that seems to work for people. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. And yeah, so all of those things that you talked about basically that come through with this beer and the heritage of the beer, being true to the style. When I the description of it, malt aroma immediately present and lasting with a tiny hint of roast barley with an unmistakable fruity and almost herbal quality to the aroma due to the late addition of Mount Hood hops. The addition of a pinch of roasted barley during the process leads to a distinctive bite, which is balanced and crisp, medium bitterness, caramel flavours all the way to the end. So, yeah, like I said, I mean, I love malt-driven beers, and I love red, amber beers as a whole. But the thing that I really like about the Irish red as a style, particularly this beer, is one, it's a little bit lower in alcohol content, so you can drink a few more of them, and two, that nice dry finish, so you don't get that build up of hops, that resinous thing which you can say with a red IPA or something like that, where over time it sort of gets clory and hangs all over the tongue, and you can have one or two, but the third one sort of starts to get a bit intense with the flavour, whereas this just keeps sort of nice dry finish and keeps going along. So this is obviously one of the, as I said, it's noted in the BJCP as one of the commercial styles that represent the brand, and there's a couple of other ones in there too. Obviously, the Kilkenny, Murphy's, Porterhouse, and the Smithwicks are all classic examples of that. And interestingly, there's a few breweries in Australia that are brewing the style as well. Like our local brewery down here, Longstocking Brewery, they do an Irish red ale, which is really on point. Had one the other day from Morrison's, they're down in Tasmania, and I've seen a couple of them floating around. So it's not a style that's forgotten here in Australia either.
No, if anything, it's gaining in popularity, and like even this Celtic red type of category as well. So either Irish red ale or Celtic red, and it's basically they're both one and the same. And that's I'm seeing quite a few kind of independent craft brewers here in Australia getting into that style as well, and which is great to see, because it kind of raises awareness for the category. And I think for people like it's within the craft beer realm, it's been so heavily dominated by IPAs for so long, and now you've got sours and everything else. More recently, people are starting to look towards pilsners and lagers, and they're getting a lot of attention, which is rightly so. But again, beer keeps giving all of these different styles, and Irish red ale. There's not that many. I think I'm the only person importing Irish red ale directly from Ireland. Yeah. I'm sure others will follow, but Ohara is just a phenomenal brand to have, and we're really delighted with the way that it's getting received here in Australia. And interestingly, just on the point about 4.3%, because it's the same with Stout. A lot of Stouts these days that I see coming out, they're like 6, 7, 8, 9%, maybe up to 12% for some of your Baltic porters and stuff. And look, it's fantastic, but these are at the extreme end of kind of craft brewing and very, very specialist. Whereas with the likes of an Irish red or an Irish stout, these are kind of beers that people are drinking every day. And in Ireland, people don't typically go to the pub and have one drink. They're going to go and have a couple. And so again, if it's strong in alcohol, you're just not going to be able to drink that many of them.
Yeah, sure.
So for people to go to the pub to socialise and to spend a couple of hours, and this is a great way. It's like before the word session, ale or session lager really came about. That's what people were drinking. And I know even in the UK, for example, like bitters and milds and stuff, in and around 3%. And they've been around for years and years, and it's just styles that people have been used to. And the trick for the brewer seems to be trying to get as much flavour and mouthfeel and aroma into the beer at that kind of, mid-level ABV. And I think, Nigel, with this one here, like just every sip I take, I'm picking up different little attributes of the beer and the malting and the hops. And it's amazing the flavor that you can actually get out of these beers at around 4.3%.
Agreed. And just talking about the characteristics, so the style, again, this is from the BGCP guidelines, slightly malty in the balance, sometimes with initial soft toffee or caramel sweetness, slightly grainy, biscuity palate, touch of roasted dryness in the finish. Some versions can emphasize the caramel and sweetness, while others favor the grainy palate and roasted dryness. I'd say this one definitely leans towards the roasted dryness. Appearance, medium to medium reddish copper color, low to off-white tan colored head, average persistence. Aroma, low to moderate malt aroma, either neutral, grainy, or light caramel, toast or toffee, and that's what I'd get out of this, just a little bit of toffee character. Sorry?
It's a lot, isn't it? When you just listen back to what you just described, to be picking those flavors in a beer, there's a lot going on there, and I really think that this delivers on all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Flavor-wise, it says moderate to very little caramel malt flavor and sweetness, rarely with a light buttered toast or toffee-like quality. Palate neutral and grainy, light toasty or biscuity, with a light taste of roasted grain, which leads to the classic dryness of the finish. That's the thing that I keep coming back to. Earthy or floral hops, medium to low bitterness, medium to dry finish, clean and smooth, low esters, mouthfeel, medium to light to medium. It says, although examples containing low levels of diacetyl might have a lightly slick mouthfeel. Now, my palate's really perceptive to diacetyl, and I don't get any in this, which is good because even a little bit in it for me can taste quite buttery. But I don't pick up much diacetyl in this, which is good. So that's a bit about the style, and there's also a bit about the style comparison. It's less bitter and hoppy than Irish equivalent to an English bitter, with a drier finish due to roasted barley, and more attenuated with less caramel flavour than something like a Scottish ale. So I've tried a number of sort of English, UK sort of styles of beer, but I must admit, like, there's a lot of them that I haven't tried. So at the moment, I'm going through the course that I'm going through. I'd started with German and European beers. Now I'm doing American beers. I've got to get to the English and UK styles of beers. But, this style is certainly something that I've enjoyed, as I have with when I've had the Irish Stout as well. Very, very nice beers. And again, the low alcohol content and the dryness are the two things that really keep me coming back to this style.
Yeah, and look, I think even, the weather is a big part of it as well. Coming into this time of year, darker beers, it's just great that we're able to transition between having, IPAs or lagers during the summer, and then you've got in the darker, kind of colder weather, you're able to get this, because they're very warming, they're very kind of nourishing, and you can just sip away on these beers, and it's just, this is the perfect time of year to be enjoying a stout or a red ale. And look, I found out initially I didn't bring in any of these in kegs, the stout or the red ale, because I was kind of going, look, I'm going into Irish bars maybe particularly, and they're going to have Guinness and Kilkenny. So my focus was on bringing Ohara's IPA to do an Irish pale ale, which is pretty phenomenal, and it worked well in the Irish pubs, and it didn't really compete against Guinness or Kilkenny. But over the last couple of years, I've had more and more craft bars are really interested in exploring more of a nitro range, and maybe they don't really want to have the big brands from Guinness or Kilkenny or whatever it might be. So they're delighted to have this on board. And even a couple of English bars, even in Melbourne, the Sherlock Holmes being one, the Fox and Firkin in Adelaide. If you want to go and try this on tap, those are great kind of places to go and check out. So it's becoming a more of a mainstay of my portfolio now at the moment. So it's just about kind of juggling how many kegs to be bringing in, how many cases of cartons and stuff. So it's all it's a good issue to have, you know.
Yeah, I guess one of those things with bringing in importing beer is making sure that you get the right amount, because you don't want stock sitting around for too long, because obviously it takes a little while to get here. So making sure that it's fresh and the best by dates are everything's well within range. You don't want stock sitting around for a while.
Okay, I think that every importer has that issue, and I suppose even the local craft guys as well. They want the beer to be served in an optimum condition. So it's with beer, unlike wine or spirits, you're always really going against the best before. But the only thing about darker beers, they're less affected, I think, as you get over time. I find sometimes that maybe the flavour evolves a little bit or embellishes a little bit, so you might even get a little bit of a fuller flavour. I've tried a couple of these beers whenever they're like 6 or 12 months past their best before, and it's very hard to you maybe pick up, especially if there's a bit of hopness in there that is dissipated, but otherwise you've still got all of the body and the maltiness still remains.
Yeah, I have to agree, because I had some of the bottles that you sent up, I don't know, a while ago when I tried them, and I had a few left over, and they went past their best by date. I tend to have a lot of beer floating around in my garage. Sometimes I don't get to it all, and I had the Irish Red, the Irish Stout, but also the Pale Ale, and both the Irish Red and the Stout held up really well. The Pale Ale tailed off after it had passed its best by date, but that was to be expected. But the Red and the Stout, you really couldn't tell any difference. So yeah.
No, it's great. It's pretty versatile and robust type of beer style. But obviously, look, we've been lucky now. We've had to throw out some beer during COVID and stuff, which was a real shame. But we're now kind of getting back on track, and hopefully, if we get a kind of smooth sailing for the next kind of 12 months, we'll be able to get our kind of forecasting and importing kind of spot on. And so just got a new shipment of the Irish Red arrived in this week. So all of the stock that we have of that now on the Stout is it's basically it's brand new. It have a minimum of 12 months date on it now. So
yeah. Well, even this one that you sent up a little while ago, I sent up a month or so ago, but this has still got best by 28th of the 1st, 23. So still got plenty of time on that. So let's talk about some of the other beers. Obviously, so Ohara's they do the Irish Stout as well. So same sort of vein, 4.3%. Again, pretty easy drinking. That one comes in the nitro can, and again, dryish sort of stout. Not pretty easy drinking, not too sweet, low alcohol content, and a nice dry finish. So that one's one available. But then also tell us a little bit about Rye River, because that's one of your other brands.
So Rye River, they've been going since 2013, and another independent craft brewery. There's over 100 craft breweries operating in Ireland now, a population of just over 5 million people, north and south. So we're kind of punching above our weight now with the number of craft breweries that we have per capita. So I think there's a lot of similarities between Ireland and Australian craft beer markets. And my ultimate goal is phase one was to import the best of Irish craft beer to Australia, and then I want to try and focus on exporting some of the best Australian craft beers to the Irish market.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so I think there's a bit of an untapped opportunity there. There's a bit of synergy between the Irish and the Aussies, and a lot of Irish people have spent a lot of time in Australia over the years, as everyone would know, and so they've got a lot of good kind of experiences of drinking Aussie beer here as well. But none of those beers are available in the Irish market. And I'd say for a lot of Aussie craft breweries now, the next thing is to try and see if they can get the export side of the business developed.
Yeah.
And because there's big opportunities there as well. So I would love to really have an unofficial kind of trade corridor coming between Australia and Ireland with craft beer, so that I appreciate here in Australia people are so almost militant about supporting local, and I fully get it. But at the same time, if people were in Ireland picking up an Australian craft beer, I'd love for them to be willing to explore and to try something, not just to be closed shop because it's not local, but to want to have to try something that's new and exciting. And so it would be great if people in Ireland were picking up an Aussie beer, and people in Australia were picking up an Irish beer, and knowing that it's happening on both sides in both markets, so it kind of cancels each other out.
Yeah.
But in terms of Rye River, so these guys have been going from 2013, and in the last kind of 2 years at the World Beer Awards, which is pretty much, there's a lot of award shows across every industry, but there are a couple that actually stand out, and the World Beer Awards is certainly one of the big ones that people look towards. In 2020 and 2021, Rye River walked away with more than 30 awards at each of these shows, which has made them the world's most decorated independent craft brewery, which is a pretty big shout. But it's just amazing what the guys are doing. And again, it's all about they want to do things properly. It's not just about making money, and they're looking back on what makes a good beer. So the water, 90% of beer is water. So they're really fastidious about getting the water profile exactly the way they want it for each of their different brew styles. And then they only brew in 2,500 litre batches. So it's fairly small run kind of brews, but they're just giving that consistent dedication to every time they do a brew to make sure that they have it the way it wants to be. So Rye River have become one of the kind of more noticeable craft breweries in the Irish market, and gaining a lot of interest now internationally, having won so many awards. But it's funny, I've been trying to get some of their small batch seasonal range to Australia for the last kind of couple of years, and I just couldn't get any because it sells out as soon as it's kind of being produced and out the door of the brewery. It's just gone. So I had to work pretty hard this year to get a small quantity of some of these small batch seasonals. And the one that we're looking at here at the moment now, this is the brunch. It's a Baltic breakfast porter, and so it's brewed using organic maple syrup from Canada and locally roasted coffee as well. So I'll be honest, I'm about to try this for the first time with you here today.
All right. Well, I wasn't sure what we were going to try next, but I'm up for that. For two
maybe
reasons.
do Ohara Stout first, because there will be a fairly big contrast, I think, between if you'd like to do it that way.
Oh no, that's all good. That's a good no, and I will probably only pick one more, so that's okay. Yeah. Do you want to do the Irish Stout or do you want to do the Brekkie Porter?
Let's do the breakfast porter, because I've been hanging to try this, and
okay, I just need to clean my glass because there's still all that beautiful creamy head in there.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's just lacing right to the end, and the fact that it just retains its head right to the end of the glass. It's
just give me 1 second. I'll clean the glass.
No problem. And this is another one from the Rye River stable that we brought in. It's Revelation Brown Ale, which is a collaboration with Chris Malt in Ryburg in the UK, one of the oldest maltsters in the UK. And we'll maybe have a quick chat about this towards the end as well.
Yeah. So we'll pour that and then we can talk. So firstly, Baltic Porter, I would say is probably the most underrated beer style in the world. I just reckon it's for me, it's just a sensational style of beer. Very interesting. It's got its own history and story to it, of course, but I just think it's one of those ones. There's just not enough of these beers brewed, and then if you, I can smell the, I can smell that from a mile away, and then Canada is one of my favourite countries, and maple syrup. There's not really a thing in the world that maple syrup doesn't enhance. So, I think we've got to be on a winner even before I get to it. So, brewed with organic maple syrup, raup malt, so a smoked malt, golden naked oats and coffee, lagered breakfast porter brings forward warming notes of maple, bacon, coffee, sweet porridge, and stout. My God, that sounds like a a absolute meal.
It's a tall order, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
it smells absolutely delicious. I get the rough malt, so I definitely get the smoked malt in there.
and even the yeast, they're using a German Bock yeast as well, which would really underpin everything that they're trying to achieve there with the malt bill.
And unlike the last one, which was a mild 4.3%, this is 9%.
Yeah.
So, my God, it smells delicious.
Yeah, just so much going on the nose there, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. There's so much going on in the mouth too. It just sort of, there's about 3 or 4 layers. I was going to say something, and then the next thing came, and then when I was thinking of that one, then the next thing came. But the Rauch malt is quite prominent, and I get it on the nose, but it's not dominating like a typical Rauch beer would. It's there and noticeable, but not dominating. You do get that sort of like a sweet sort of, I'm going to say mahogany now. I know that mahogany is not a smell, but it's got that sort of.
Well, it conjures up an image, yeah.
Yeah. It's got that sort of warming, glucosey, caramelly sort of. And that, I guess that's underpinned by the maple syrup, but it's got that sort of,
The maple syrup, it's such a standout for me. Just that sweetness that just kind of wraps itself around everything else that's going on there and gives it that, even the mouthfeel now, it's kind of thick and viscous, and but really, really smooth, and lovely little bit of sweetness coming through there as well. It's almost reminiscent of an Irish coffee to some extent as well.
It's like when I take a mouthful, I've almost got to download everything I'm thinking in one go, because if I wait too long, the next thing comes in. It's just it's got so many layers in it.
In terms of the malt bill, like we're looking at Bark Vienna, Bark Munich, Golden Naked Oats, Abbey Malt, Rauch Malt, Brown Malt, Carafa Special 2, and Chocolate Malt. So
that's why there's so much going on.
They just went all in here, and it's incredible because, look, with Rye River, their main say they've kind of got a core range of brands that they do. For example, they do some wicked IPAs and stuff, the likes of Coastal IPA.
Yeah, I got that one.
Yeah, which is absolutely, man, it's a phenomenon. And I know there's so many great IPAs over here as well, but these really stand out. So this is kind of the bread and butter of the brewery, and then. But they're really, like, some people are specialists only in a certain field of brewing, and their kind of special one-offs aren't really as good as some of their mainstay brands. But with Rye River, they're just smashing it, man. They're so passionate, and so yet again, like, it's to see why they're winning, so many awards at these international award shows. It's when you taste this, you kind of see why,
Absolutely. I wouldn't say I'm definitely not speechless, but my brain is going like 100 miles an hour with all the things that's coming in this beer, and I'm just like, I want to get them all out, but I can't speak quick enough to get it all out. It even looks like it's got this sort of, I don't know, with the darkness. I mean, it's obviously quite dark, and it's got that nice sort of off-white creamy head, but looking in the top of it as well, it's got that sort of like that sort of almost oil, like sump oil look about it, where like the Beverly Hillbillies when they talk about the black gold and the Texas tea and the bubbles going up in the, it looks like that as well. There's a lot going on.
Sorry, guys. So I couldn't do anything about that.
That's all right. All good. Well, if this is sort of, I guess, a look into the quality of the beers that these guys brew, it's going to be pretty hard to top. Like that's an exceptional beer. Like I can't say I've had a beer that sort of that tastes like that before, and it's got so much going on. And like I said, I mean, I love Baltic porters, but this is just, this is next level. It's got a lot going on in there.
Well, look, that's really what I've been trying to do with Rhizome and with Artisan Ireland. Ireland is such an exciting market for craft brewing and distilling. It has been for the last kind of 20 odd years. Every bit as passionate as their Aussie counterparts. And, I don't bring huge quantities of these beers in. And I don't know how they're going to go. And they're pretty expensive, relatively speaking, So I tend to bring in small quantities just to test the market and see how they go. But honestly, it's just I'm really proud to be bringing these beers to the Australian market, and I know there are guys out there that are just going to go nuts when they get their hands on these. So I'm hoping that,
absolutely. I mean, like for me, that's a 10 out of 10. That's just an exceptionally well-made beer with a lot going on. Beautiful, a delight to drink. So we've got, I know you put together a bit of a mix pack. So we're going back and look at the styles. We've got the Irish Red, we've got the Irish Stout. We've got a few of these of the IPA and the Extra Pale Ale, but also some of these limited release ones. So this one, which is the Baltic Porter. There's also this one, which is Lupulus Borealis, which is a hoppy pils. Now, I like my pilsners, so that'll be an interesting style to attack.
You're in for an absolute treat there, Nigel, because it is just off the charts. Yeah. And I know this one here is very interesting. It's a collab with Chris Malt in the UK from Ryberg, and they're one of the UK's oldest maltsters.
Yep.
And they have this machine. It's called a RevTech machine. Right. Now, I don't know exactly how it works, but it's something that they have developed, and it allows them to get like binary into where they want the malt to get roasted to. So they're able to just define exactly how the malt comes out. And so that's a collaboration that Rye River have done with Chris Malt in the UK. And again, not that many brown ales knocking about either. I remember Newcastle Brown Ale was the big one back in the day. I don't really see that anymore as well. But again, these are styles that are, they're amazing and they're unique.
Yeah.
These guys have gone back in now, and there's a great video that we may share. I think I sent you the link to it the other day. It's an interview and a video with the guys from Rye River at Chris Malt in the UK, talking about the beer and the process of getting the malt that they wanted for this particular brew. And again, using kind of coffee in this as well. So I've always seen a great connection between kind of darker beer, obviously, and coffee. And obviously, when you're roasting your malts, you're getting some of those espresso, those kind of chocolate and coffee kind of notes. And so they've included that as well in the Revelation Brown Ale. So again, only very small quantities available in Australia. I've been hitting up a couple of the specialty bottle shops in and around Melbourne. So the likes of Purvis would have this, the likes of McCoppins and Carwin, etc. And but otherwise available at artisanireland.com.au as well. So that's kind of where all of these beers reside. Because sometimes I walk into the shop with I get a container of beer, arrives in, I've got maybe 5 or 10 new beers on board, and hitting up a bottle shop with 6 or 7 new products straight away. It's a lot for these guys to take on.
Yeah.
But the good thing about having the website is that look, I can put all of these beers up there, and they're available. So when people do come across them and want to try them, that's kind of a pretty handy kind of place to go to as well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you mixing that up as well, because quite often, like, you go to a website and you go, I really want to try that beer, and it's like it's only available in a 6-pack, and you can't buy a 6-pack like 6 different beers, So you've put together a couple of mix packs, one which has got, I think, fours, like groups of 4, and the other one's groups of 6. So, but you've put together a bit of a collaboration, so you end up with a case of beer, but a mix of all of these different styles as well. So,
Well, I suppose it's just really giving people an opportunity to jump in to see what Irish craft brewing is doing. And, we've got a couple of different styles there that aren't overly represented here in Australia at the moment, be it reds, stouts, brown ales, that type of thing. And especially with this Baltic porter, my goodness, that's the first time I've tried this, Nigel. I've had this here for a month or two, and I've been holding off on trying it until today, and I'm just absolutely wow! It's knockout,
Yeah, I agree too. I've like you sent these beers up, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something. I had them sit in the fridge, haven't had any because I was waiting for this. But boy, if that's the level of beers that these guys are brewing, I really want to hop into the rest of them. So, look, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for sharing, the information about these beers and putting together some packs. I will upload this video to our website and to the YouTube and share it around so that people know what's happening. We'll provide links to the packs that you've got available, and hopefully we might be able to come back in maybe 2 or 3 weeks' time after some people have bought some of the beers, and we can come back and have a look at a couple of these other styles. I'd like to do perhaps I mean, I've had this beer before, but I like really doing an in-depth, at a style. So maybe we can come back and we can either do the Irish stout or the brown ale too, because there's not, like you said, I mean, there's not very often you get the opportunity to look at a style like an English brown ale, because there's not too many of them in the country. So that might be something we can come back and have a look at as well.
Well, look, just something else to get you a little bit excited. I've brought in a small quantity of this just to try it out. So this is also from Ohara's, and it's their Leanne Full On. So it is it's an extra stout, Irish extra stout. So we just got it available in cans now at the moment. I've only got a couple of cases in just to try out, and coming in at 6%. But again, chocolate, vanilla, and mild mocha. So I think this is going to be. We can include that next time when we're looking at some of the stouts, because I think that's what Ohara's really excel at, is some of these darker kind of classic style beers. And just a note as well, just this week I've managed to get 5 cases of Ohara's have done a collaboration with Firestone Walker in the States, and they sent over a couple of kegs of their Irish red ale, and then Firestone Walker have got to work and barrel aged those as well, and the results are pretty phenomenal. So just got a couple of cases of that came in this week. I haven't got it out of bond yet, but it'll be available through our website, hopefully from next week. And but again, it's even just trying to get your hands on these beers. It's very difficult. The Baltic Porter, that was actually had been sold already to an importer in Russia, and I managed to talk the guys at Rye River around to reduce their order and get some across to me here as well.
Thank God you did, mate, because this is a great beer.
Well, look, it's just, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes as well, and it's great. I think just what these guys are going to be bringing out. They've got a Miami J tropical IPA as well. That's just insane, and so I'd love to start building these brands up and getting awareness for them. But I suppose at the moment, the likes of Ohara's is still it's the main kind of brand for me. The nitro cans are just opening up a new market. They're really well priced as well. They're very good value for money for what you get. So and as I said, a lot of pubs are starting to get involved now with nitro kegs on tap and stuff. So hopefully now that COVID's out of the way, we can get back to building these brands up the way that we had hoped.
Well, mate, I will certainly get behind this sort of stuff because it's all good beer, and at the end of the day, I don't really mind where it's made, as long as it's all good beer. And the Ohara's is good. I've had that before, and this beer from Rye River is exceptional. So thanks for joining us today, mate. I will put the links to the special offers you've got there. And like I said, hopefully we can catch up in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll look at one of these other styles too, and we'll get a few of the our members to grab a case and get some of these mixed beers so that they can have a crack at them as well.
Nigel, just thank you so much for all your support. Great to be invited on again to talk about what we're doing here. And so artisanireland.com.au, worth jumping in. And if you can sign up for, I think we might run a competition with you guys next week to win a mixed case of these beers. And it just be like an email kind of sign up, so we can let you know when we've got small batch stuff coming in, and so you'd be the first to know.
Sounds like a good plan, mate. All right, thanks for that. This is bloody enjoyable. Cheers, mate.
It's great. All the best. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye. Talk to you.